The year is 1718, the Caribbean Sea. The sun melts the tar on the oak deck boards. The temperature of the planks reaches 60 degrees, scorching their feet even through the thick leather of their boots. The crew is exhausted, dehydrated, and then the captain appears. He slowly brings a frosty pewter mug to his lips. Inside, ice cubes clink. It seems like a miracle. The invention of the refrigerator is still nearly 200 years away. But this isn't magic. It's a clever trick based on a quirk of physics that science would only explain centuries later. And today, we will uncover this pirate secret. For these men, cold was not a luxury. It was a matter of survival. In this inferno, water in wooden barrels would bloom with algae and turn to slime in just a week. It became a breeding ground for dysentery and typhoid. The death toll on ships from diseases, exacerbated by the heat, often far exceeded losses in battle. In these conditions, a sip of icy rum was an impossible dream, like the gold of El Dorado. The ability to create ice from nothing was a true weapon. Their method rested on 3 pillars. First, a forgotten scientific principle, a true alchemical paradox known to a small circle of scholars long before official science explained it. Second, a secret substance, readily available but completely unobvious. And third, their primitive but devilishly effective ice generator. We will reveal its design. It looks like a lost Da Vinci schematic found in a rum cask. What was this principle? What was the substance? And how do you build this machine? We will answer every one of these questions. Their greatest enemy wasn't the Spanish fleet. It was a fundamental law of the universe, the law of thermodynamics. It's simple. Heat always moves from hot to cold, no exceptions. In the Caribbean, everything was a source of heat. The ocean, the air, the scorching deck, everything gave off energy. To create cold here meant forcing physics to work in reverse. According to the laws of nature, heat flows as relentlessly as water down a mountain. The pirates' attempt to make ice was like trying to make a waterfall flow uphill without a pump. They didn't need a pump. They needed a way to cheat the very gravity of heat. It was a task with impossible conditions. The air temperature here was consistently above 30 degrees. The ocean was 28. The humidity was almost 90%. In such an environment, any ice brought from Europe would turn to water in hours. Any chilled liquid would warm up in minutes. Their goal was not to preserve cold, but to generate it from nothing in the middle of this hell. Physicists call this the heat index. At 35 degrees with 90% humidity, the body perceives the temperature not as 35, but as 55 degrees. In these conditions, sweat barely evaporates. The body loses its primary function, self-cooling. This isn't just discomfort, it's a direct path to heat stroke. The entire deck, the masts, the air, and the ocean around them was one giant, constantly running processor, emitting heat. They needed an anti-processor, a mechanism that would devour heat. Any standard methods were useless. They didn't need a way to insulate. They needed a source of anti-heat, a chemical reaction that consumes energy instead of releasing it. And they found it. This was their chemical vampire. A normal fire burns wood and gives off heat. They needed a cold fire, one that would suck the heat out of everything it touched, leaving only frost and ice in its wake. There is a simple and logical explanation. They brought ice from the north. This explanation is completely wrong. Any ice loaded into the hold of a pirate sloop in Boston would have turned into warm water long before reaching Cuba. The mathematics of melting is ruthless. It would be another 100 years before a man named Frederick Tudor, the true ice king, would build an empire on shipping ice to the tropics. But to do so, he needed ships with double walls, airtight holds, and tons of sawdust for insulation. Pirates had none of this. Their holds were just damp wooden boxes teeming with rats. The second theory is even more fantastic: deep sea water or mountain glaciers. Lowering barrels on hemp ropes to a depth of 200 meters where the cold ocean layer begins is a titanic effort for a single glass of cool water. And the nearest glaciers are in the Andes, at an altitude of 5,000 meters, beyond hundreds of kilometers of impenetrable jungle. This was a logistical dead end. Their method had to be self-contained. It had to work here and now, right on the deck. So the ice wasn't brought, it was created on site. and for this they needed nothing more than a barrel, water, and an unassuming white powder, a powder many pirates already carried for entirely different, more explosive purposes. It's like discovering that the main ingredient in dynamite can also work as the refrigerant for an air conditioner, a substance that holds the soul of fire and the heart of ice at the same time. The name of this substance is potassium nitrate, or common saltpeter. Its dual purpose was the main secret. To the rest of the world, it was a key component of black powder. Its formula was known to every cannoneer, roughly 75% saltpeter, 15% charcoal, and 10% sulfur. This mixture brought fire and death, but for the initiated, it also brought ice. Pirates sourced saltpeter from the filthiest of places. One of the main ones was crystallized bat droppings, or guano, scraped from the walls of dark caves. It turns out they made the ice for their rum from the very same substance they used to make bullets and bombs for their enemies. This effect is based on a simple law of physics, an endothermic reaction. Here's how it works. When you dissolve regular salt in water, it absorbs a tiny amount of heat from the liquid. You wouldn't even notice it. But saltpeter isn't just any salt. It's an ultra-greedy thermal vampire. To dissolve, its crystals require a massive amount of energy, and it sucks this energy, this heat, directly from the surrounding water. It doesn't cool the water, it literally steals its thermal energy. This reaction is so powerful that it can drop the water's temperature by 15 or even 20 degrees in just a few minutes. This isn't cooling, it's an act of thermal violence. To break down and enter the solution, the crystalline lattice of saltpeter demands a ransom, and it robs this ransom from the water molecules, leaving them to freeze in a state of shock. This principle was not a pirate discovery. It was the forgotten knowledge of scholars. As early as 1589, the Italian polymath Giambattista della Porta described it in his book Magia Naturalis. He detailed how, using saltpeter and water, one could chill a bottle of wine to the freezing point. The knowledge existed in old books. The pirates merely had to find a practical application for it, far from European libraries. But this presented a new problem. You couldn't just throw saltpeter into a barrel of rum. The drink would be hopelessly poisoned. They needed a mechanism, a simple yet ingenious device that would allow them to use the cold from the saltpeter without mixing it with their precious liquor. The pirates faced the same challenge as a modern nuclear reactor engineer, how to use the energy from the core, in their case, the saltpeter, to affect the outside world, the rum, while ensuring the toxic fuel never comes into contact with the final product. And the pirates solved this problem. They invented the world's simplest heat exchanger. Its design was brilliant in its simplicity. It was a barrel within a barrel, or a pewter mug inside a wooden bucket. The space between them was filled with water. This was their cooling circuit. The pirates didn't invent this setup from scratch. They hacked and adapted an ancient technology known as a zir pot. For thousands of years in Egypt and India, similar pot-in-pot containers were used for evaporative cooling. The pirates simply replaced the physics of evaporation with the chemistry of an endothermic reaction. They kept the ingeniously simple design, but inserted a new, much more powerful engine into it. Here's how it worked. Saltpeter was poured into the water between the walls, and then came the most crucial step: rotation. The barrel could be rolled across the deck, or the solution could be stirred rapidly with a stick. Without this movement, a thin layer of icy water would instantly form around the crystals, wrapping the saltpeter like an insulator and nearly halting the reaction. Rotation, however, constantly broke away this icy film. It brought new, warmer portions of water to the chemical vampire. It was like throwing more logs on a fire to make it burn brighter, only in reverse. They were feeding heat into the cold, forcing it to devour energy with maximum efficiency. The result appeared in 10 to 15 minutes. The outer wall of the inner container would be covered in frost. The rum inside would become icy cold. You could even get ice slush. And here, another physical trick is revealed. The brine solution of water and saltpeter freezes at a much lower temperature than plain water. It's the same effect that keeps the ocean from freezing solid. This allowed their cooling liquid to drop to -5 or even -10 degrees while remaining liquid. It was this super-chilled brine that froze the pure rum in the inner container. But the method had a major drawback. It was a one-time use. The saltpeter dissolved. For a new batch of cold, a new portion of the expensive powder was needed. That's why icy rum was a symbol of power, a privilege of the captain or the quartermaster. However, the most resourceful pirates found a solution. After use, the brine wasn't thrown overboard. It was poured into shallow pans and left in the sun. The water would evaporate, leaving behind the precious saltpeter crystals on the bottom, ready for another cycle. It was a perfect closed loop. They used the fire of the sun to create ice, again and again. But this ice wasn't about comfort. It was about power. Absolute power. Picture the scene. A crew, tormented by the sun, is drinking warm, foul-tasting water. And the captain is slowly sipping icy rum. This isn't just a privilege. It's a demonstration of control over reality itself. He isn't just a leader. He appears to be a magician, an alchemist who has bent the elements to his will. This reinforced his authority better than any whip. Let's not forget, a pirate ship was a floating democracy, an extremely brutal one, but a democracy nonetheless. A captain could be removed by a simple vote at any moment. So, tricks like these were not a luxury but a vital political tool. It was a way to prove without words, I am smarter than you. I understand the world in a way you never can, and that is why you must follow me, even when my orders seem like madness. There's a law formulated by the writer Arthur C. Clarke. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. For a superstitious 18th century sailor whose world was filled with krakens, mermaids, and sea ghosts, a captain creating ice from a component of gunpowder was not a chemist. He was a powerful sorcerer, a man who had made a deal with the sea devil. But did this sorcery have a practical application? Could it save lives? Absolutely. After a battle, with a wound from a cutlass or a cannonball fragment, the main threats were invisible enemies, swelling, infection, and fever. A cold compress, made in 10 minutes right on the deck, could drastically reduce swelling and bring down a temperature. It constricted blood vessels, slowing the spread of infection. This gave the ship's surgeon precious hours. It increased a wounded man's chances of survival. Thus, a magic trick for the elite became battlefield medicine for everyone. This simple technology, based on cunning rather than brute force, is a perfect symbol of piracy. And the most interesting part is that this 300-year-old pirate hack hasn't just survived. It has been patented, packaged in plastic, and is likely sitting in your office first aid kit or your child's sports bag right now. That disposable instant cold pack is the very same pirate ghost trapped in polyethylene. Inside, it's the same setup, two inert substances that create cold when mixed, a capsule of water and a crystalline powder. Modern versions use ammonium nitrate or urea. They devour heat even more effectively than the old saltpeter. But the idea itself is 100% pirate technology. Every time you break the inner pouch of such a pack, you are repeating the gesture of a pirate pouring a component of gunpowder into a barrel of water. This isn't just a technology that has survived, it's an entire protocol, a way of thinking we have almost forgotten. It consists of 3 simple lessons. First, know your tools inside and out. To everyone else, saltpeter was a component of gunpowder, but to the captain, it was also a refrigerator. This is the hacker mindset. It sees a phone's GPS module not as a map, but as a machine for mining cryptocurrency. Second, generate a resource. Don't just store it. The pirates didn't try to solve the impossible task of preserving cold. They created it on demand. This is the logic of cloud computing. Why fill up a hard drive when you can get any data you need from the network on request? And third, knowledge is the sharpest weapon. Demonstrating a unique skill was more effective than direct violence. This is the instinct of a stock trader, the one who gets information 5 minutes before everyone else takes the entire pot. Which of these skills is most valuable today? The alchemist's eye, which sees hidden potential in the mundane? The engineer's mind, which creates a scarce resource from nothing? Or the spy's instinct, which uses information as an absolute weapon? Ultimately, what was this, first and foremost? A demonstration of pure scientific knowledge or a brilliant psychological trick to manage a crew? Write just one word in the comments, science or power. What was the main driver of this ingenious trick? The pure, beautiful curiosity of science or the cold, calculating pragmatism of power? Your vote will decide.